Coming up on this Friday edition of Newsline at noon, French police comb a vast wooded area and small villages north of Paris in a frantic hunt for the two men who attacked the satirical weekly Charlie Hebdo. There are fears the world could be headed toward another financial crisis in the face of tumbling crude oil prices and jitters over the prospect of Greece leaving the eurozone. South Korea and Japan agree to seek closer economic cooperation despite diplomatic tensions over territorial and historical issues. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
It's New Friday, January 9th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this afternoon, the two men responsible for the deadly shooting attack on the offices of a French magazine are still on the loose and are thought to be hiding out in a vast forest north of Paris.
In one of the largest police operations ever seen in France, tens of thousands of officers are combing the area hoping to find the suspects before they can do any more damage. Sun Jung-in has the latest.
Police have been searching door to door in a forested area north of Paris, following reports the two main suspects had been spotted there. There are also reports they robbed a gas station in the area. Police have warned local residents that brothers Sharif and Saeed Kouachi, 32 and 34 years old respectively, are heavily armed and extremely dangerous. While tens of thousands of police and several helicopters continue their hunt for the men, 9 people with close ties to them have been detained for further investigation. Another suspect, 18-year-old Hamid Murad, gave himself in at a police station early Thursday. So far, no group has claimed responsibility for the attack. However, AP reports citing a senior U.S. official that the two brothers have links to a Yemeni terrorist network and the older brother had traveled to Yemen in the past. The news agency also reports that the two were on the U.S. government's no-fly list. In a separate incident Thursday, a policewoman was fatally gunned down in a southern suburb of Paris by a suspect described as wearing black and a bulletproof vest. However, authorities say they have found no link between this incident and the assault on the Charlie Hebdo magazine. France held a moment of silence at noon local time on a rare day of national mourning for the 12 victims of the attack, as well as for the free speech they stood for. The Eiffel Tower was also dimmed for a time at 8 p.m. as a vigil continued at the Place de la République. Sun Jung-in, Arirang News.
A tribute paid with the pen. That's what cartoonists from all over the world are doing following the massacre at the office of Charlie Hebdo on Wednesday. They have come together to demonstrate that freedom of speech will prevail and that such attacks will never keep them from breaking out their pens. Lee Ji-yoon has more.
A picture is worth 1,000 words. French leading broadsheet Le Monde posted an image that says wholeheartedly with Charlie Hebdo and promised to do all it can to keep the tragedy-stricken magazine up and running. Australian cartoonist David Pope's image went viral on social media. His image shows a gunman standing over to a dead cartoonist and justifying his action by saying he drew first. Pope says nothing justifies the brutal and shocking massacre. Many of the cartoons spoke on behalf of the victims and stood up for free speech. The Telegraph's cartoonist Christian Adams was one of them. His published product shows no illustration and is titled Extremist Approved Cartoon. This one is by an American political cartoonist, Rob Torno. It shows sharpened pencils and pens being pointed against their attacker. Torno wrote a commentary on the massacre saying the cartoonists at Charlie Hebdo gave their lives to advance freedom of expression. French London-based illustrator Lucille Clark's image shows the solidarity of his colleagues. This image was liked over 82,000 times on Instagram. Posting this image, Clark writes, "Break 1,000 will rise." Just like that, cartoonists from all over the world mourn the deaths of their fallen colleagues, but promised not to back down in the face of violence. Lee Ji-yoon, Arirang News.
Tumbling oil prices and fears of Greece's possible exit from the eurozone could spell trouble for global financial markets. An index that measures risk aversion in markets around the world has soared to levels not seen since the 2008 global financial crisis and the U.S. credit rating downgrade in 2011. Kim Min-ji reports.
The world's financial markets are on edge, with risks soaring to levels seen during the global financial crisis of 2008. The Citi Macro Risk Index, which measures risk aversion in global financial markets, rose to 0.96 this week in a scale of 0 to 1. The index, indicating riskier market conditions when approaching 1, tracks various financial data, including stock market volatility and bond rates in the U.S. and other emerging economies. The high reading stems from the dip in crude prices that began in mid-2014 and fears that it could spell financial trouble for emerging markets. Greece's possible exit from the eurozone is another factor. It is rare that the index soars to above the 0.9 mark. The current level matches previous records seen during the 2008 financial crisis and after the 2011 downgrade of U.S. credit rating. The uncertain future of Greece and a prolonged recession in the eurozone, coupled with global crude prices falling below the psychologically important $50 mark, suggest markets will remain unstable for some time to come. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Despite their frosty relations, Korea and Japan have agreed that it's important to boost economic cooperation. The two neighbors held high-level talks in Seoul on Thursday that centered around discussions on potentially lifting Korea's import ban on Japanese seafood. Hwang Seung-hee reports.
Following 4 hours of talks in Seoul on Thursday, senior officials from Korea and Japan agreed to continue their close economic cooperation. Korea's foreign ministry said the high-level dialogue was held to review and reaffirm the two neighbors' economic relations in their 50th year of normalizing diplomatic ties. A senior official said nearly an hour was spent discussing Korea's import ban on Japanese fisheries products, imposed after the Fukushima nuclear disaster in 2011. Japan's chief delegate Yasumasa Nagamine claimed Seoul is implementing stricter regulations on Tokyo than other countries and added the import ban could have a negative impact on their economic relations. To that, Korea's chief delegate An Chong-gi said it's important to assure the Korean public that Japanese seafood is safe before lifting the ban. He added the issue can be reviewed after Korean experts conduct a field inspection in Japan next week. The meeting comes amid thorny bilateral relations stemming from Japan's ongoing denial of its wartime atrocities. The Korean official said holding such a frank, constructive, high-level discussion in the beginning of the year in itself is a positive sign for the two neighbors. Hwang Seung-hee, Arirang News.
Now, there's fresh evidence North Korea is able to, or very close to, having submarines that are capable of firing ballistic missiles. Now, given the level of stealth submarines have as they glide underwater, such a breakthrough would pose a significant security threat to South Korea, Japan, and even the U.S. Kwon So-ah reports.
Satellite pictures posted on 38 North show North Korea is upgrading a submarine to make it capable of firing missiles. The U.S.-based website devoted to analysis of North Korea says a rectangular opening around 4 meters long and 2 meters wide can be seen on the submarine which sat in the North Simpo South shipyard at the time the photos were taken. Satellite imagery analyst Joseph Bermudez says the hole probably contains launch tubes that could fire up to 2 missiles. Once the process is complete, the ship may then be tested for land attack missile technology. If the analysis turns out to be correct, then North Korea's submarine development has taken a significant stride forward, posing a bigger threat to South Korea, Japan, and U.S. bases in the region, given that submarines are much harder to detect than other pieces of military hardware. It would also mean a whole new level of missile defense planning for nations at risk. However, experts believe North Korea still lacks technological experience, and constructing missile-capable ships would be expensive and very time-consuming. Although there appears to be no immediate threat, Satellite imagery also showed workers moving around the shipyard's facility over the past 6 months. This raises concerns Pyongyang is actively working on a possible naval construction program. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, it's exactly because of clandestine military things like that it's been 4 years since the United States sent aid to North Korea, and it seems that streak will extend into a 5th year. A spokesperson for USAID, which is in charge of administering foreign aid to civilians, says there are no plans in the 2015 fiscal budget to provide any type of humanitarian assistance to North Korea. Washington last sent aid to Pyongyang in 2011. Following a massive typhoon and monsoon rain there that caused a lot of devastation. That came in the form of $1.5 million to 3 private organizations that provided food and medical aid. Now, there are mixed signals out of Seoul and Washington about how advanced or not North Korea's nuclear missile technology is. The US Defense Department says there's no hard evidence that shows Pyongyang has the technological capacity to develop miniaturized nuclear weapons, miniaturized nuclear warheads rather, that are small enough to fit on the top of ballistic missiles. Earlier this week, though, the South Korean Defense Ministry said in its white paper that North Korea is closing in on mastering this very advanced technology. This is a big issue because if Pyongyang was able to make miniaturized warheads, they could technically be attached to ballistic missiles, which could potentially hit the mainland United States.
Let's get a check on some of the other global headlines we're following this Friday lunchtime with Eunice Kim standing by at the news center.
Eunice, Indonesian search teams have now begun preparations to begin lifting the tail of the ill-fated AirAsia flight 8501 that lays at the bottom of the Java Sea.
Right, and the presumption, of course, is that they will be closer to accessing the black boxes that hold the data and voice recorders, which will help investigators get a better idea of why the plane disappeared off of radar that fateful Sunday morning in late December. An Indonesian search team loaded a helicopter with balloons that will be used to help raise the tail section. They will be transported to the search vessels on standby near the site where the wreckage was found. Personnel will try to take advantage of the favorable weather conditions in the morning before sudden changes that are expected later in the day. So far, small debris and 44 bodies have been recovered, mostly from the water's surface. Head of Indonesia's Search and Rescue Agency, Bambang Sulistyo, said that finding the missing bodies remain the main focus of his operation. In other news, the United States is set to close several military bases across Europe, 15 in total, amid shrinking budgets and as Washington shifts its focus to Asia. Much of the closures will be of smaller bases, described as remnants of the Cold War. The number of troops will remain relatively the same at more than 60,000, mostly in Germany, Italy, and the UK. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel confirmed this move as the Pentagon said it will save the U.S. military some $500 million a year. Assistant Defense Secretary Derek Chollet said the adjustments would not affect America's ability to meet its commitments to allies and partners in the region. Germany has agreed to a $600 million loan to help Ukraine pull out of its massive debt and to rebuild the war-torn country in exchange for a commitment of economic reforms. Now, some of those reforms have already been enacted by Kiev's new parliament. The move came ahead of talks in Berlin between German Chancellor Angela Merkel and Ukraine's Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk on Thursday. Finally, American whistleblower Edward Snowden has claimed the NSA spends more taxpayer money on cyber attacking other countries than it does on defending the nation. He made the statement in an hour-long interview filmed in June in Moscow that American broadcaster PBS is said to be preparing for a broadcast. In it, Snowden explains the U.S. intelligence agency became a sort of the national hacking agency in recent years as spies realized that they could receive a higher boost in budgets if they focused on hack attacks. He said the trend only served as setting a new international norm for other countries to the detriment of the security of Americans.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea. Connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on NEWSLINE at Noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about...
The improvement in consumer sentiment in Korea has prompted Koreans put a bit more on their credit and debit cards. The Credit Finance Association of Korea says combined spending of $45 billion was made through credit and debit cards in November last year, up 5% from a year earlier. During the same period, the number of card payments jumped more than 14% to over 1 billion. In particular, payments at local convenience stores topped $512 million, setting a record high. Now, the amount spent buying Korean cars jumped 42% to nearly $2.5 billion, largely due to falling crude prices. Now, riding the new wave of popularity in webtoons, Korea's online-based cultural contents market is poised for massive growth over the next 3 years. The KT Economic Research Institute says the market size of the industry will double to $800 million by 2018. The institute took added value into account when making the forecast, such as character licensing, messenger emoticons, and the export of contents. In order for the industry to grow to $1 billion in size, the report suggests establishing a global distribution channel, either by launching a new platform or through existing smartphone app stores. Internet of Things is no longer an unfamiliar term to us. The theme is actually dominating the world's biggest technology trade exhibition, the Consumer Electronics Show, this year in Las Vegas. Our Kim Jian shows us how the latest and hottest gadgets are getting smarter, more wearable, and super connected.
What should I wear? It's a question people constantly ask themselves after setting foot in the 2015 International Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. Perhaps a drone for your wrist that unfolds and takes flight on your command to capture a Kodak moment. Or something that helps you make the most of your time in the gym, tracking your heartbeat and movements. And who needs a chauffeur when you can order your BMW to pick you up right away?
BMW, pick me up. It's not science fiction anymore. The age of the Internet of Things has already started.
Wearable smart devices are increasingly in the spotlight. Companies present gadgets in line with the Internet of Things, where devices are talking to each other across the Internet. Companies believe that everything we touch or interact with will be connected to the Internet in the next several years. Samsung Electronics set a goal of having all of its devices, including home appliances, connected to the web by 2020.
I'm coming home.
And the climate for business looks bright with the rising demand for smart home devices. U.S.-based Strategy Analytics forecasts the global market for smart homes to grow more than $100 billion by 2019. Kim Jian, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea has completely ruled out co-hosting the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics with North Korea. A spokesman for the presidential office of Cheongwadae says the government will not be co-hosting the event with any other nation, and that includes the North. There had been some speculation South Korea might make an offer to the North, as Seoul has been looking to open up high-level dialogue and improve relations all round with Pyongyang. On Thursday, South Korea's Unification Minister Ryu Kil-jae flatly denied that any co-hosting offer would be made during any upcoming talks with the North. Last month, North Korea offered to host some of the Olympic events at its Masikryong ski resort. The proposal came after the International Olympic Committee announced plans that would allow host cities to share events with other countries to save costs. Well, we're almost done with the first full week of 2015, and it's a time to wonder what the next 12 months might bring us. So, what's in store for the nation's presidential office, the parliament and the main political parties this year? For a rundown of 2015's biggest political events and what impact they might have on the public, our Park Ji-won reports.
The first major political event of the year will be on February 8th. That's when the main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, will hold a convention to select a new party leader and Supreme Council members. Up until last July, the opposition party was led by two co-leaders, Kim Han-gil and former presidential candidate An Chol-soo. However, the party faltered in July's by-elections and has been led by interim leader Moon Hee-sang ever since. Former presidential candidate Moon Jae-in and Park Ji-won, a close aide to former President Kim Dae-jung, will go head-to-head for chairmanship of the party in February. On April 29th, by-elections will be held for the three parliamentary seats that turned vacant when the minor opposition Unified Progressive Party was disbanded in December. These are three electoral districts in which traditionally progressive parties have been successful in the past. If the ruling party loses all three this time around, though, it could be seen as a referendum on the incumbent administration. In May, both the ruling and opposition parties will elect their new floor leaders. For the ruling Saenuri Party, an internal strife between supporters of President Park and those who don't stand with her has widened. Whoever replaces current floor leader Lee Wan-gu, who's in the Park Geun-hye camp, will have a big influence on the relationship between the party and the presidential office. Later on in the summer, the minor progressive Justice Party will elect its new leader. Experts say the most watched of the party elections this year will be when the new floor leaders are picked in May.
The presidential office can push through its agenda at Parliament so long as the floor leaders cooperate. For the president, the floor leader is more important than the party leader because the floor leader leads legislative duties. If the ruling party's new floor leader comes from outside President Park's support base, it will be a tough year for the presidential office.
The government aims to forge ahead with reforms aimed at a more flexible labor market, at state agencies, and at the national pension system. These are issues that are controversial, so they require a cautious approach to minimize backlash. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, some 15 years ago, NASA launched a scientific research satellite into space to capture images of the planet we all call home. And the space agency recently released some of the best photos, and they show the Earth in a very beautiful way. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
This is one of the most beautiful composite photos of the Earth. The title Blue Marble combines several data and images from the Terra observation satellite in 2002. The photo dramatically depicts the place that millions of living organisms call home. But the Earth does not always look so beautiful. This is a photo from a massive California wildfire in 2013. It is the third largest wildfire on record, measuring 1.5 times the size of Seoul, and was big enough to be spotted from outer space. The California blaze wasn't the only Terra satellite captured. Over the past 15 years, over 40 million wildfires have been recorded, damaging roughly 1/3 of the Earth. Even signs of global warmings are captured. This picture was taken in 2002, showing the Larsen B ice shelf melting away. This gigantic shelf is 5 times the size of Seoul, but in a matter of seconds, it breaks apart. Scientists say it shows the severity of climate change. The photos have been captured and collected by NASA after launching its first flagship observation satellite into orbit in 1999. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Good Good afternoon. Now, it should not be as sunny as the last few days today, but things will warm up a bit this afternoon and temperatures will climb into the average range, into the positives. So the cold wave advisory that has been issued in some regions should be lifted shortly, but the dry weather advisory has been expanded and even some regions have been upgraded to a warning. So be extra careful about starting any fires and stay hydrated. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the high in Seoul will climb up to 2, while Daegu and Gwangju should peak at 7 and 6, and Busan will reach 8 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will rise to 10 later on, while Daejeon and Dokdo will be getting up to 5. Now, by tomorrow, we'll notice much warmer conditions with highs near 5, though it will be a bit cooler on Sunday. Then next week looks to be promising under a good amount of sunshine. Well, that's all for me this week. Let's send it back to Mark and Jin-joo in the studio.
Well, thank you very much, Jion, for all your weather reports this week. And that does it for this Friday edition of Newsline at Noon.
Mark and I'll be back at the same time on Monday. Have a great weekend.